I do not live in a flood-prone area. Why should I listen to this podcast?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast to the protection against heavy rain and flooding by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
So the big challenge is, how can house owners like you and me get a flood-free home? How can business managers like you and me get a flood-free company? And how can public servants provide flood-free critical infrastructure and livable cities?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe. This podcast is for foresighted and proactive people who do not want to shovel the muddy water out of their room while standing in the midst of the disaster.
Therefore, those who design and plan, the architects and engineers, need to construct such buildings and cities, and that even when the entire environment is completely flooded. That is a challenge, and this podcast will give the answers.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
Myths and facts about flood protection, story 1. Today it is a brand new episode that is something new. I never did that before. Today we talk about myths and facts. So that is like in cinema, surprising. And is this really true, or is it a myth? Social media is sometimes distributing strange facts. Isn't it? Even an American president, we all know him, created the name of an alternative truth. But will a homeowner or a business manager rely on such vague statements when it comes to protection of his property, of their property from the damage, from the danger of floods? So I want to talk about some myths in flood protection. Today it's about one, and I want to tell what's the difference, what is the truth and the alternative truth. I started with, you heard it at the beginning of this episode, I do not live in a flood-prone area. Means I don't care about any flood protection because I will never be flooded. So what is the reality? Let's have a look on that. I talk first about weather and temperatures. So 2014, 2018, 2020 were the warmest years in Germany since weather records began in 1881. So we have records in 1881, the warmest year with an average temperature of 10.5 degrees was in 2018, before, and now July 2022. Switzerland has been recording weather data since 1864. And provides similar findings. 2018, 2020 and 2015 are the record holders for average annual temperatures. And in Austria, weather data has been recorded since first prize 1762, starting in Krems, Münster, and reports similar records. 2018, 2019, 2014, 2015 were the warmest years in Austria. The 10 warmest years in Germany and worldwide were all after the turn of the millennium in 2000. But what we remember are heat records. And the summer of 2019, I tell you so many years, but it's about records, and it's not really important that you remember this year or that year. But the summer of 2019, not the summer of 69 from Bryan Adams. No, not this one. The summer of 2019 was very hot. Heat records were set one after the other, but these were already surpassed in 2022. In the summer of 2022, it was extremely hot and therefore dry in Germany, in Austria, and in Switzerland, and many other parts of Europe. The same applies to many parts in the world. New heat records were set. Just think of Spain, Portugal and England with temperatures of over 40 degrees. That is what we only know from the Middle East. And recently, also in the Philippines, there are terrible temperatures. We only know this from Africa. The soil dries out to such an extent that not a blade of grass will grow. And the soil is compacted and has concrete-like properties. And one question for you. Have you ever seen water seeping into concrete? That's not possible? That's right. Nothing seeps away. That's exactly what happens when flowing water flows over dry ground. It lingers there. However, as the water comes from all directions and new water is constantly being added by rain, the water rises quickly. When you hear the word flow, the word flow, I must pronounce it like that. When you hear the word flow, you automatically think of a slope. If your building or house is unfortunately or unfavorably located on such a slope at the lowest point or right in the middle of it, you are extremely vulnerable to any flowing water coming from above, be it from melting snow or from swelling streams that turns into raging rivers. Clear, if you live at the bottom of a hill, then be careful. Perhaps the snow will come down to you. It will melt, and then suddenly you have a raging river in your living room. But be also careful even if you live in a flat residential area without a direct slope, and you do not live in an area at risk of flooding. You might say this may well be true for many areas, but dense development is increasingly changing the conditions. You probably know all that. Perhaps some of you remember the childhood when you grew up, and I grew up in the south of Berlin, at the deep south of Neukölln in Rudow. That the western part was the American sector at this time, and that was very green. And we always said that it's a small village, but with the advantages of a big city in Berlin. And the things have really changed until now. When I go to Berlin right now, things have changed. There's concrete everywhere, skyscrapers, highways, autobahns, and so on and so forth. And I think you made similar observations. Look to China. What happened with these mega cities everywhere? It's incredible. Hanoi was growing. I think that was already 8 or 10 years ago. That was growing so fast that it was useless to make maps, because the borderline was always moved to outer areas. So dense development is increasingly changing the conditions. What used to flow from the left to the right is now flowing from the right to the left and finding a different path. And that happened. There was an old man in Manila, and one time in Quezon City, I asked him, what happened last time when the water was coming? He said, 10 years ago, I remember the water was coming from this left side. And he was pointing with a finger to the left side, standing in front of his building and watching the street from the left side. But this time, I don't know what happened, he said. It came from and he was pointing with a finger to the right side, up to the street. It was coming from this direction. I really don't understand that. I also don't understand it, why exactly that happened, but I told him, look, that can happen with a new commercial center that has been created. The reason can be that suddenly other homeowners were concreting the garden, and that it can be that the drainage system, the sewer, perhaps it's clogged and it is not working perfectly. We don't know that. What I want to say is, what used to flow from the left to the right is now flowing from right to left and finding a different path. Development is constantly changing, and so is the flow of water. Yesterday's conditions are no guarantee that flooding will not occur tomorrow. That is a good sentence. Yesterday's conditions are no guarantee that flooding will not occur tomorrow. I must remember this one. This is what happened in July 2016 in Berlin on the Sonnenallee. Sonne is a German word for sun. Sonnenallee. This famous street from the TV movie of the same name by Leander Hausmann is really flat and not on a slope. After a heavy downpour, people could be seen driving through Sonnenallee on a jet ski. I was really amazed about that. And that is what we see from other cities as well in the world. So inadequate sewers do the rest. I mentioned that already. And the authorities are sometimes unjustly scolded. Often the sewers are actually quite well designed, but simply cannot cope with the masses of water. It's too much rainfall. And it can be assumed that the city of Hamburg, north of Germany, has a very good sewage system as well. But this still led to flooding in the port area, and the fabulous, famous fish market in Hamburg on Christmas Day 2016. You see similar things in other cities, and heavy rainfall of 40 to 60 liters per square meter in just a few hours is simply too much for the sewage system to cope with. So sometimes, however, we are also talking about rainfall of well over 250 liters per square meter in half a day. Wow. And that is much too much. And you can assume that if you're building your house and therefore your property are located in one of the unfavorable places just described, or serve as a reservoir for flowing water, then you should think again about how you can counteract climate change now and in the coming decades. And what I said at the beginning, I do not live in a flood-prone area. Who can tell that already? Can you really be sure about that? I have seen places flooded where the people have sworn, we will never get flooded. We are safe. That is not a flooding area in Clark Pampanga, in the biggest economic zone, we were told. And then the office of the Investors and Locators Association was flooded up to the ankles. I think I told about it in another podcast, or wrote about it in a blog article. And why? Because it was very, very hot. The grassland outside was dry like cement, and there was a small slope, and then it suddenly started to rain with a heavy rainfall, and the water was getting over the terrace was first flowing downhill. The slope was, 5 degrees, or even not. That was some degrees, but more than 1 degree is enough. Slope is slope. And the water found the way through the terrace and the terrace door into the building. And then it was distributed everywhere in every building. That's it. Yeah, so I do not live in a flood-prone area. I think if you hear this sentence the next time again, you will have your own opinion. Stay safe and flood-free. I wish and hope for you that you make the right decisions when it comes to your personal flood protection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast channel if you haven't already. Now it only remains for me to wish you a good day. Do something with it. Maybe until the next podcast episode. I would be very happy. See you then. As always, stay safe and flood-free. Your Andreas Klippe and the whole Flood Experts team.
That's it again with a new episode of Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe, German engineer, book author, and head of the Flood Experts. What can Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe protect for you? Anytime? Worldwide? Contact us or just click through to www.floodexperts.de/bonus. Detailed engineering. German quality. Safe. Flood protection secrets. The secrets you'll want to unfold.
Don't forget, you're only one flood barrier away.
Subscribe to the season, and you'll never be late for an episode.